Welcome to the Entrepreneurial CEO Podcast, where we dive into the real stories behind building and scaling a business. Each episode, we sit down with CEOs, founders, and leaders to uncover hard-won lessons in leadership, systems, and team building. Listen in each week to learn directly from real business leaders who have been in your shoes, had success, made the mistakes, and all of the messiness that comes with building a business. If you're ready to learn from real-world leaders and gain insights you can apply today, you're in the right place. So let's get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Wendy, thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to have this convo.
Yeah, everybody. Today's guest is Wendy Lieber. She's the CEO and co-founder of ContentBacon. Wendy launched the company in 2014 to help businesses tell their story in a way that really drives revenue, not just engagement. And over the past decade, she's evolved ContentBacon into a subscription-based growth partner that combines CRM optimization, segmentation, and content strategy to turn databases into actual pipeline, which we could all use. Wendy, it's great to have you on the show and look forward to hearing more about the business.
Thank you. Let's go.
So before I go into questions, I always say, do you want to just tell us a little bit more about yourself or ContentBacon?
Sure. Like you highlighted, we started ContentBacon in 2014. And my real passion and part of the purpose for ContentBacon is I believe every company has a great story to tell. Most are just either not doing it or doing it well. And that's, where we really come in and partner with companies to help draw out those stories. And often it's things that we take for granted or have forgotten because we're so busy running the business. So having an outside partner be able to see things and draw things out is really useful, not just for the external facing piece that content plays, but also internally, how you articulate things, how you develop processes. So there's a lot of value to content creation, which I hate using the word content anymore because it's like so overused, but I don't know what to replace it with. So if any of your listeners have a better word than story or content, that doesn't sound like a marketing bangled word, like reach out, I'll give you $1,000.
I think that's totally, it's accurate. We talk about that at MAP all the time, right? Having that third-party facilitator that can oftentimes identify things or push, whereas otherwise it would get glossed over if you were just doing it internally, right? And so having that independent third party can be tremendously helpful. So how did it start? How did you get involved? How did you get started with ContentBacon? What was the idea that made you think like, hey, this is something I actually need to do?
So I had a company prior to ContentBacon called Athena Marketing, and it was more of a boutique consulting type company to private equity groups and businesses, and everything was very customized. It wasn't scalable. It was a successful business, but it wasn't something that I really wanted to try and grow and scale because it was very like agency like, and that was not my passion. And I noticed as any customer, any client that I was dealing with, they were struggling with content. And at that time, that's when social media, was just, blooming, and it was becoming more and more important for companies to make sure that they had not just an online brochure, but a website that was being updated regularly. They were active on their social media. They were active with their database. And so I developed a very simple subscription model under my previous company that was like blog content, a newsletter, social media, and you put your credit card on file, let's go. And it took off. And so that was really how ContentBacon got started. And I was in an organization at the time called EO Accelerator, which was a feeder organization for companies that weren't quite at the threshold in order to get an EO. And I met my partner at the time, and he was doing branding work, but he had some videos that he was kind of doing something similar, like a video subscription. And so we decided to join forces. And initially, it was kind of like a side project. We were both kept our, companies and were treating Content Bacon like a side project, but very quickly it took off and surpassed both of our revenues combined and qualified us into EO. So I was like, all right, maybe we need to stop being half pregnant and have this baby and raise it. And so
Yeah.
while we initially started Content Bacon in 2014, I consider the real launch 2016 because that's when we kind of put, all of our efforts into it. So that's kind of the long short story.
That's awesome. Okay. So it was about, was it a little over a year, maybe 2 years for it to
Yeah,
grow
like a year and a
into the
half.
full-time thing. That's
Yes.
awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
And now you've evolved. So now it's evolved from the content execution into CRM optimization, segmentation. Why? What were you seeing in the market that made you think, hey, we've got to pivot, we got to go into this direction?
A lot of it came from customer requests and things that we were just doing as added value, where often we were creating email nurture sequences, different kind of campaigns, and we're implementing those campaigns into our customer CRMs. And we just noticed that when would talk to our customers about their CRM, it was never clear, like who owned the CRM, what was the purpose, what's going on. And so over time, it was like, okay, if we really want to show results, show impact, if we truly integrate the CRM with the content, one, we have more skin in the game because we can truly show results and impact. And we were really able to uncover all of these, kind of assets that were being underutilized, whether it was a cold list, contacts that were just never followed up on, leads that weren't segmented properly, giving sales enablement content to help them close more deals. So that was happening organically. And then around that time too, we were like projecting or anticipating that perhaps our bread and butter services might be replaced by AI. And we wanted to create, kind of more of a moat. And it was, again, I'd rather be, lucky than smart. We were kind of doing it around the same time and it just kind of like molded together. And we, did a rebrand and not really relaunched our company, but started marketing ourselves with that niche in mind around that same time. And what we found is every time we would talk to prospects about what we were doing, they were like, oh my God, where have you been my whole life? Because it was a real pain point that they were experiencing. And then our projections didn't really come true. A lot of, because we're very much a done for you service. And so are thinking that a lot of our customers might leave and do content on their own. That really didn't happen. And we became more valuable because companies were seeing so much, kind of, content garbage out there. They wanted to make sure what they were doing was truly unique and specialized and not just same old, what everyone was spitting out. So that was really the impetus. And that's always been our, I guess our, modus operandi is to what are our customers' pain points? And without deviating and trying to be, something for everyone, how can we continue to evolve and add more products and services that truly support our customers to drive more awareness, drive more interest, and ultimately drive more revenue?
Is it the case that the secondary, I don't want to say secondary business, but the business of the CRM optimization, segmentation, and sort of just like and now does that strengthen the first business? Meaning like if I spend X amount of dollars to create content, it's only as good as the implementation or the campaigns, and it's only as good as the measurement of those campaigns. And so if I'm the CEO, I'm like, wait a minute, we just spent $50,000 on these campaigns. What happened? And it seems like, I
Yeah.
don't know. Then, right? So that if you put in this segmentation and these CRM changes, you're like, here, look, here's all the data. It's like, did the
Yeah.
two zipper together that way?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's always been our goal is we want to have skin in the game. We want our customers to know we want to be accountable and not just say, here's your content. Oh, it didn't work, too bad. Or, oh, it's, didn't
Yeah.
resonate. but really be your partner and be able to dig into things that work and do more of it, and equally dig into things that don't work and understand why they don't work, and be a partner to create solutions and solve together. And that's so having the data, being able to measure it with the CRM, and having access to all that just makes us a stronger partner, because without that data, without being able to see what really happens, we can't truly be accountable. It's like, hey, we can give you leads, but if someone can fill out the form on your website, but if they're not being nurtured, if someone's not
Hmm.
following up, like, we can't be responsible for that. And we really want to be, because we know companies, they want that kind of information and partnership, and they want to work with someone that, is there to help them, support them, and also call them out when they're not, doing the things that could help them drive revenue.
Yeah. I've seen it. I mean, yeah, I've been in many situations where that CRM it's just owned by multiple departments, right? And therefore it's owned
Yeah.
by nobody. And then it just becomes a mess and sloppy and, yeah, duplicate data
It's
and
such a
just,
the
yeah.
glorified, Excel spreadsheet or database. It's just, it's not. And CRMs are, they're like your company's operating system. You can
Hmm.
really see what's going on, and it's not just net new. I often issue a challenge to companies, and I love it. We do it ourselves every so often. If you couldn't generate one new lead for, fill in the blank, 90 days, 6 months, what do you currently have that you would have to leverage? And that question alone has you look at just the tremendous assets that most companies have. And they're just not leveraging them, because it's always like new, new, new. We just need new leads, new leads, new leads.
Hmm.
But it's like, what about the leads you already got? What about the customers that you already have? What about the past customers? What about all of that, that if you spent more time and energy on, you could generate tremendous revenue. And you've already
A
got
ton
that,
of
that
value.
loyalty in many instances.
Yep. Yep. It's even our own company, there's a tremendous amount of value in the existing database. So you're in year 11 now. What does
Yes.
being the leader and CEO today require that it didn't, or that it, in comparison to year one or year three in the beginning?
Oh, goodness. Well, one, it requires me to be more of a leader of leaders versus, the leader, and trying to maintain control of everything. My favorite, way I spend time today is, developing new products, coaching and developing my team, and then nurturing, big relationships. And in order to spend my time in those areas, I've had to really develop a team, and give them the reins to, execute and not do it the way I would do it, which year one, year two, I was so protective of our
Yeah,
customers, because my previous business was, I ate what I killed. And so if there was ever a customer that was unhappy, or, my spidey senses, were like, you're not doing enough, like, that was my MO. And I really had to start trusting my team and setting them up for success, and realizing that my way was not the best way. And also developing processes and systems, and, hiring people that were really, really good at that. And so today, that's, again, to me, one of the most important things is having a team truly cares about each other, cares about our customers, and I don't have to be involved in the day to day things. Although I have found that the ebbs and flow of business are, I have periods of time where that is 100% true. And then I get pulled back in,
I
and I'm
think
like,
that's normal. I think some people
yeah,
think it's so binary, but I think as a good leader, you have to know when to swoop in and when to pull back, right? And sometimes
yeah,
you have to get involved in the details. So that means you have to be close enough so that you can actually swoop in and add value, and not come in. They're like, they don't know what they're talking about. That's a
right.
horrible feeling. So you have to
Yeah,
stay on the fringes so you can still help, but also give them the space to operate. Like, it's a
yeah,
fine line.
absolutely.
Hi, if you're a CEO out there who's struggling with focus for your company, aligning your team, accountability, if you're struggling with execution, connecting the dots from where you're at to where you want to be, we've got a great program for you here at MAP. My name is Michael Cato. I'm the CEO. Most importantly, I was a client for 15 years, sold my company to a public company, and then bought MAP so that we can help other entrepreneurs with this specific problem. We're a 60-year-old company. We've worked with 170,000 individual executives and CEOs. We've worked with 15,000 organizations. This is what we do. Click the link below to learn a little bit more about how people just like you, CEOs, have transformed their business and ultimately transformed their life by running through the MAP system.
You mentioned leading your leaders, which I think is hard. It's hard for multiple reasons, but how have you gone about the development of those people? Because most people don't get any leadership training, don't get any management training. So finding good leaders is hard, and then developing those people is hard. How have you gone about that?
Yeah, I think, part one is asking more questions versus, trying to give solutions, which is a skill to develop is, when there is a challenge rather than, swooping in and solving it, which often is somewhat easy, for me, is giving, my team the ability to come up with solutions themselves. That way they have more, kind of more stake in it. And often they come up with better solutions, and then we do a lot of training. We do role playing where we just talk about different scenarios and again, give everyone a chance to work them out, practicing versus having to do it in real time. So whether that's a difficult conversation that a customer may challenge them with, whether it's, understanding our products, making sure they understand them as well as perhaps I do. So having those conversations and creating an environment where people can make mistakes and, they're not in trouble, that they have space to make mistakes. And even sometimes if those mistakes cost us business, again, knowing when it's a people issue versus a process issue. And for me, it's taking responsibility of all of it and realizing that as a leader, I create the vibration, the energy. So I have to be really responsible for how I show up, no matter what it is, if it's on a Zoom call, if it's in person, if it's even just in the way I communicate, really being responsible for how I want to leave people because my team uses me as an example. And so if I'm, short and sippy and not respectful, they're going to emulate that. And that's not what I want. So just holding myself to a higher standard, which I really enjoy because it causes me to grow and stretch, and then seeing them want to hold themselves to that standard because that's the example, that's the space we're creating. And it's not just about the business. I'm a big believer like how we show up is how we show up. We're one person. We're not a business person or personal person. We're one person, and often the way we handle conversations internally, I've had my team members share with me that they use some of those same tactics in their personal lives and have grown
For sure.
relationships. And so that's like when I hear that, it's like so fulfilling to me because to me it's again it's coaching and development. And I have had such amazing mentors throughout my life, including now. So to be able to be that to others is truly, truly fulfilling.
It is. It is. I totally agree. Um, one of the one of the most fulfilling things, like with the companies that we had, was seeing other people that worked for us grow as leaders, right, and grow in their professions and become amazing, and then go on to different things in their careers. You mentioned like the applicability of business to personal. At MAP, we use DISC a lot. I don't know if you're familiar with DISC. Like it is totally
Sure.
applicable and DISC and communication styles and the feedback loops and all those things are absolutely applicable in personal life, right? Like I should have my wife take the DISC test so we could see
Yeah.
like what style she is versus
I
me,
can't
because
believe
it
you
totally.
haven't.
I know I should. I should. I know she is, but I should. But yeah, I agree. It absolutely. Communication's the biggest breakdown, right? In both business and personal. So if you can learn how to become a better communicator and listener, then it has such a tremendous impact.
Yeah, I have a saying that if there's great communication or even good communication, anything is solvable. It's when the communication breaks down where progress stops, and that can be really frustrating. And so, being able to create a space where people can communicate, even if it's, sloppy and, whatever, it's better than no communication.
I'm smiling. I'm smirking a little bit because I just remembering that I said the same thing to my 16-year-old son because he was getting in trouble. I'm like, dude, you would get in trouble 90% less if you would just communicate better. If you just would just communicate with us, you'd be in a better spot. He's not grasping it, but at least I planted the
Yeah.
seed.
Yeah.
So when you look 1 to 3 years out, what are your goals for Content Bacon, and what do you think might get in the way of you getting there?
Yeah, I mean, we're really in growth mode right now. We're still becoming known as the CRM content expert. So, getting our own marketing more dialed in so that when companies are challenged with that, they come to us, that we're the go-to resource, is certainly, one of our goals. Developing partnerships, one-to-many relationships. We've had a lot of success with that on a small scale where we become, an agency or, a marketing team within a big, Fortune, 100 companies, content partner. So developing more of those is really important. Our own technology stack and really determining how to scale more effectively and efficiently with various tools of automations without losing the heart, the human touch. We're competing today again with a lot of companies that are trying to use or are using AI for so many things, whereas we it's really important to me and to our team that the human connection stays and intact. And so figuring out how best to do that, that still keeps us highly competitive. So those are the key areas. And, I guess what could get in the way, it's, again, having the right team, as we evolve, attracting the right talent, and, execution, just constantly making sure that what we say is backed up even more by what we do and the results we create. And I think, that's really important for me to have the type of impact so that, companies that work with us are like, damn, we get great results. So, just making sure that our infrastructure stays in step with, our, demand. And again, I've gone through the ebbs and flows of that where I've waited to get the sales before I've, built the infrastructure, and, quality has been sacrificed. And then I've done it the other way where I've built up the infrastructure so much thinking the sales are going to come and then been off a little bit. And that's not always great with the cash flow. So, always
Yeah.
balancing that so that they're in lockstep is really, for me, important, and something I'm committed to.
When you so you're looking 1 to 3 years out, when you're setting these company level goals and priorities, how do you cascade them down to the teams or to the individuals and ensure they're able to echo what the true priorities are for the business so that everybody knows?
Yeah, so at the, company level, the leadership level, we're setting the yearly priorities, the quarterly priorities. We're getting better and better at making sure we don't set too many so that we don't overwhelm the
Yeah.
team, and that we can actually finish what we start. That's been a key focus for the last couple years. That's been really fulfilling. And then, we have a really good cadence of different types of meetings that keep everyone informed. So we do daily huddles, we do, weekly, we call it the weekly sizzle. We do, quarterly meetings. So those cadences so that that communication is constantly being reinforced is super important. And, something that sometimes feels like a chore, things get busy. Oh, let's get the meeting this week. But I've learned like, no, we don't, because that communication, especially as a remote company, and we've been remote since before remote was cool, because we learned that finding the best talent was, a lot easier when you weren't geographically
Oh yeah.
constrained. So, we've been perfecting that, really since inception. So that's how we do it. And we often hold, just kind of, for lack of a better word, like open office hours where, in the afternoon, it's open for, because we have quite a large freelance team, can bring your cocktail or whatever, come on, ask any question. So, we do that, pretty frequently too, which is really great to, bring everyone together. Because to date, I have not brought, bring the core team together, but I haven't brought everyone together. So
Mm.
I would love to get to that where, I can bring everyone together, annually, and, get to see each other really face to face.
I think, yeah, it's important, right? I mean, I'm a huge, obviously, advocate for remote, but it also means that you have to be intentional about those other things to build the culture and get people connected and do some of those in-person things, which, sometimes feel disruptive, but they're super important.
Yeah.
Um, you mentioned the meeting cadences. You know, how do you I think oftentimes people have lots of meetings, right? And like they're not always super productive. How do you ensure that your meetings leave with, decisions being made or accountability or productivity as opposed to just another meeting?
Yeah. Well, exactly that. We make sure that every meeting has an intention. What's the intention? Why are we doing this? What's the impact? We rate the meetings based on that. And people
Mm,
get lazy with ratings, right? A lot of times, when people start rating them super high, it's kind of a level set again to talk about, truly, what a level 10 meeting is. And if you're rating it a 10 all the time, it means there's no room for growth. So that's, again, from a leadership standpoint where I'm always, listening and coaching my team to listen for that, so that if people are getting, lazy is probably the wrong word, but lazy in their ratings, that we kind of set the bar higher. And, again, making sure that there are action items that come out of the meetings and that we're reviewing those, and are they getting done, not done? And at the end of the day, are we putting points on the scoreboard as a result? And
yeah,
so ultimately that's the measurement. And so I'm a big,
yeah,
believer. And what are the results? And because having a good conversation can be fulfilling in the moment, but if it's not putting points on the scoreboard, it's pointless.
yeah.
So that's,
It's a great point.
yeah.
That's a great point. And how are you tracking? You mentioned like rating the meetings. What do you do? What do you use for that?
So we use a project management tool. ClickUp is what we use, and we
Okay.
kind of keep everything stored in there. And we have a scoreboard for each department where we keep those things, and look at them on a quarterly basis at least, to see how we're tracking, and what's working, what's not, and doing deeper dives. But it's yeah, we we use a project management tool.
Okay.
It's
Cool.
not perfect, but it's, it at least it stores the information.
It doesn't have to be perfect to get it working, right?
Yeah.
I think that's great. It's a great idea. So we always ask folks that come on the show, if you could wave a wand and instantly optimize some part of the business, maybe to accelerate growth, what would that be?
Yeah, I think it's our own marketing and being more aggressive, and just doing more for ourselves and not letting the customer demands always take precedence. And I know this is a pain point a lot of marketing, companies in the marketing world have.
Yeah.
But we have so many great ideas for ourselves that, again, don't always get the priority because customer demands. And, I've had team members that are just focused on content bacon marketing, and they inevitably get, pulled into the customer side of things. So I think just getting way more disciplined on that's a non-negotiable. And we do treat content bacon as a customer. So we look at what we're doing very similarly to what we do for our customers. But, I would rate us a 5, out of 10 on how we're really doing. And so just dialing that in more and truly being the example at an even higher standard so that our customers really want to emulate our success because we're doing such a great job at what we're recommending for them to do.
Yeah. I think it's a great point. Well, Wendy, thank you. I really appreciate you coming on. Before we wrap up, where can folks go to learn more about Content Bacon or connect with you?
Yeah, so contentbacon.com is our website. You can find me on all social media. I do a weekly side of bacon on LinkedIn. It gets a little bit more personal, and I get a lot more vulnerable there. So I would encourage, people to check that out and let me know what you think, and share. And if you're having a challenge with your content, your CRM, I'm always open to, just adding value conversation and giving you some insight that you perhaps can implement on your own, or, if you want to engage with us, we're always here.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we will see you next time.